once you get into it, you'll see that it's really, really quite simple. So I don't want to take any more time away from the folks who will really be talking about them. So I'm going to turn things over to Mindy Scott from Child Trends. Take it away, Mindy.
Great, thank you, Ina. Hi, everybody. I'm Mindy Scott from Child Trends, and I'm going to be running through the goals and objectives for today's webinar, and then I'll provide a quick overview of some of the background on the performance measures and then some details about the actual measures themselves. So first, I want to just review a number of the objectives that we have for today's webinar. At the end of the webinar, our goal is that participants will be able to understand which performance measures you'll be reporting for this winter 2013 reporting period that actually starts today. As you were notified earlier, and we can talk more about the timeline in a little bit. You'll also learn how to access the reporting system, how to find the online user's guide that's available through the system. We'll walk you through how to enter and save your data. We'll also talk a little bit about how the performance measures data that you'll be entering into the system will be used, and you'll understand who has access to the data and how it will be analyzed. And then you'll also get some information about who to request for help as you're gathering information for reporting and actually entering data into the system. And we'll also run through some information about different error messages that you might get in the system and what those mean and how to recognize those. So first, I want to go over just some general background information on the PREP performance measures. We'll start by providing a brief overview of the purpose of the tribal PREP performance measures. And they'll actually be used in a number of important ways. First, we will be collecting information on the extent to which the objectives of the Tribal PREP initiative are being met. The performance measures will also contribute to lessons learned from this type of teen pregnancy prevention initiative, where the emphasis is really on replication and scale-up of evidence-based programs. The performance measures will also be used to create a foundation for program improvement efforts. And this could happen in a couple of ways that we're thinking. First, if we see that there are some common implementation challenges that grantees report across the board, we may decide to focus some general program technical assistance efforts in these areas if we see some really common challenges coming up. But we also hope that grantees themselves will use the performance measures as a tool to help identify areas and strategies for their own program improvement strategies or program improvement efforts. And also the performance measures will be used to report specific information about the PREP programs to Congress. There are several steps that we will follow to analyze the performance data that you'll be reporting. First, the data will be reported by grantees and program providers in the PREP performance measures reporting system. And then the final data will be provided to Mathematica for the analysis. And Mathematica staff will review the data file that they receive and will address any issues related to incomplete or missing data. So they'll do some follow-up and try to get the most complete data possible. And then once we have a final data set, Mathematica will be cleaning and coding the data for the analyses, and then they'll go on to conduct the actual analysis. And once all of the analyses are completed, we'll be reporting only aggregated results at the grantee, subawardee, or provider and program level. And those aggregated results will be presented to ACYF. And we'll also, we'll use the aggregated results to get kind of a national picture of the PREP performance measures. But we'll also develop separate grantee profiles based on the data. And I also want to mention that all of the performance measures data will be stored on Mathematica's secure server as it's being cleaned and coded and analyzed. So I want to review some information about the actual performance measures that you'll be reporting in this first winter 2013 reporting period. Overall, there are 3 categories of performance measures, and we'll focus on the first category today, and those are measures of structure, cost, and support for program implementation. And we also have participant-level measures of participants' demographic characteristics, perceptions of program experiences, and their perceptions of the effects of the PREP programs. And we also have performance measures related to attendance, reach, and dosage. Across all three categories of performance measures, the measures will originate from multiple levels. And at the topmost level is ACYF itself, and all grantees will report data to ACYF. These data will be based on information from the grantee level, but also from the subawardee or provider level, from the program model level, and aggregated data from participants. And just as a reminder, participant and program model level data will not be reported at this time, but will be reported in fall 2014, although data collection for those measures began over the summer on August 1st. So today's webinar, as I mentioned, will focus on these three levels of reporting: the grantee level, the provider level, and the program model level. And so here's a bit more detail on what types of measures that you'll be reporting for winter 2013. At the grantee level, you will provide data on structure, costs, and support for programs. At the subawardee level, you'll report data, again, on structure, costs, and support for programs, for information that's happening at the subawardee or program provider level, and also data on implementation challenges and needs for technical assistance that providers are experiencing. And at the program level, you'll report data on the different types of program models implemented by each provider. We'll show you the specific performance measures a little later during the live demonstration of the reporting system, but I'm just going to give a quick overview of the types of performance measures that are being reported at each level, with a brief summary of the importance and the use of each measure. So we'll begin with information that will be reported at the grantee level, and this information will focus on the structure, costs, and support necessary for tribal prep program implementation. And in particular, we are interested in collecting data in three specific areas. In prep, we're collecting measures about prep funding, about grantee staffing, and training, technical assistance, and monitoring. ACYF plans to use these data to understand where and how funding was used for tribal prep programming, to understand the amount of staffing necessary to administer prep programming, and to understand the mix of activities that are being undertaken across the grantees. At the subawardee or provider level, you will report data on structure, costs, and support for tribal prep program implementation in two key areas. Here we're focusing on prep funding and prep facilitators. As I mentioned, we will also be collecting information on prep program implementation challenges and needs for technical assistance at the provider level. It's important to note that if a subawardee did not provide programming to youth during the October 2012 through September 2013 grant period, and that's the time frame covered by the performance measures that are being reported in winter 2013, only limited information will be collected about that subawardee and its programs. Grantees and their subawardees will not be required to provide data on all measures in these instances, and we'll review later as we're going through the system what is required for all subawardees, regardless of whether they served youth during the last federal grant year, versus what is required for subawardees who did provide programming to youth during that time. So you'll be able to see the differences based on whether youth were served during the federal grant year. These data at the subawardee or provider level will be used for a number of purposes. First, the data will help us understand the various funding sources used to deliver tribal prep programs. The data will also help us understand how many of the subawardees were new during each federal grant year. And we'll also be able to understand the total number of facilitators used to deliver prep programming for each subawardee, as well as to gain an understanding of which facilitators were trained and which were observed. Information about program implementation challenges and needs for technical assistance will be used to understand the most common challenges across subawardees, as well as the areas of greatest need for technical assistance. Okay, the third and last level of data that will be reported is the program model level. And we are asking you to provide information about the structure of each program model being implemented by each subawardee. So for example, if a subawardee is implementing reducing the risk and making proud choices, you'll be reporting information on each of these program models. So we'll have performance measures for each model being delivered. The measures being reported at this level include information about the intended number of program delivery hours, the different types of populations targeted by each program model, and the adult preparation topics that are included in each program model. And these data will be used to understand the intended dosage of each program model, to understand the primary groups of youth being targeted by each program model, and to understand which adult preparation topics are addressed by each of the program models being implemented. Okay, before we move on to the demonstration of the reporting system, we wanted to first review the overall plan for collecting and reporting all tribal prep performance measures data. This table shows what will be reported this winter and what will be newly reported starting in fall 2014 and then every fall after that. As we presented today, starting today, December 5th, grantees will report performance measures related to structure, cost, and support for program implementation. They will report on the features and structure of tribal prep grantees, subawardees, and program models, as well as staff perceptions of implementation challenges. As I mentioned, these data should correspond to the last federal grant year, so for October 2012 through September 2013. And as an example, you'll be reporting on measures of how funds are being used, and that information will pertain to the use of grant funds between October 2012 and September 2013. And the reporting system will open today and will remain open until January 8th of 2014 to report these measures of structure, cost, and support for programs. Then next fall, in fall 2014, grantees will again report the same measures of structure, cost, and support for program implementation, just revised or updated for the next federal grant year. Grantees will also report new measures from the participant and attendance reach and dosage data that are being collected now, so including the entry and exit surveys. Starting in fall 2014 is when those measures will be reported. And those are, again, measures like participant characteristics and youth perceptions of program effectiveness and their experiences in the programs. Data collection for participant level measures and measures of attendance, reach, and dosage will be organized around a prep participation year, which starts on August 1st of one year through July 31st of the next, and follows cohorts that begin and or end during the period. And we have some specific guidance for what participants and what cohorts to report in each reporting period. For example, we will collect data from all entry surveys completed during a prep program participation year and all exit surveys completed during a prep program participation year, even if those surveys are not from completed cohorts. Now, this is a little different than the performance measures on attendance, reach, and dosage, which will be collected only for cohorts that complete a prep program during a participation year. And we can answer any questions that you may have about data collection and data reporting across these different measures. So that's all of the information I wanted to present. I think we're going to take a break for questions, and then I'm going to turn things over to Eric, who will begin the live demonstration portion of today's webinar.
Thanks, Mindy. If you have questions, please type them into your screen. I don't see any just yet. So if you have any, type them in now, and I'll read them, and we'll have Mindy answer them. Okay, let's see. One question is, will the slides be sent to us following the webinar? Yes, I thought you were sent them yesterday. I did see an email that went out with the slides. They probably only went to the grantee contact. So if you are on the staff, I would ask the person who is the grantee contact. because they were sent out. They will also be posted on FSB's website. Let me see if we have any other questions. Any other questions? That was the only question that I had thus far. I'll wait another minute or two in case any of you are typing them. Well, it doesn't appear that there are any questions. Well, Mindy, you apparently you presented so well that there are no questions.
Good to hear. But definitely feel free to ask questions throughout, and we can address more at the end if we have time.
Great. Okay. Well, we will now turn this over to, wait a minute, let's see. Oh, it says, can you post the website where the slides will be? Yes, we will do that as well. Not a problem. We will let you know where they will be. Okay, if there's no further questions, then we will move on to Eric. And this is Eric Peel from RTI who will do the live demonstration. Okay, Eric, go for it.
Thank you very much, Ina. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to go through this with you while I get my screen up here. What I'd like to do for the next several minutes is introduce you to the website and give you a bit of a tour of the actual system. Mindy's gone through the data that's going to actually be collected. What I'd like to do is show you the forms where you will enter the data, show you how you can interact with the system, show you how you can access some of the resources that are available to you to help explain how to interact with the system and how to understand some of the elements that you have to enter data for. First, the web-based performance measure reporting system is located on the PREP Community of Practice website. So for those of you who have accounts for the Community of Practice website already, if you are the primary contact for your grantee, then you have already been given permission to access the performance measures system. Every grantee organization will have one contact person, and it will be the primary contact, who will be responsible for authorizing other individuals to access the performance measures system. So if you are the primary contact for your grantee organization and you do not have an account for the Community of Practice website, following this webinar, we will be sending you an email that gives you your credentials and access to both the performance measure system and the Community of Practice website. So, but for those of you who do already have an account and who are the primary contacts for your organization, you will should already have access to the performance measure system. The way you access it is once you log into the PREP website at prep.rti.org, you'll see in the upper menu a link to performance measures. So you would simply click on that, and it takes you to the performance measure system. Now, a grantee is the state, tribal, or territorial agency that receives PREP funding and has fiduciary and administrative responsibility for the grant. And so the grantee data page is the page where you will be taken to when you click on the Performance Measures tab at the top of the page. Now, the reason I say this is we have two roles. There's grantee role for the grantee organization, and then there is a sub-awardee or provider role for organizations that are agencies or entities that are providing PREP programming directly to youth that are acting as an agent of the grantee. So if you are a sub-awardee, or if you have sub-awardees, those accounts have to be requested through the primary contact of the grantee organization. The way you do that is once the grantee, the primary contact of the grantee organization is logged in, there's a menu item on the left-hand side. It says Request User Accounts. I'm just going to take you here first, and then we'll go through the rest of the site. You simply enter the name of the person, give us their email address, and then you tell us whether or not they are a subawardee/provider. If they are, you have to tell us what subawardee or provider they belong to. Now, this part here is very important, and I'll tell you why, and then I'll show you the implications momentarily. Because we have these two roles, we want to make sure that only the right people see the right data. So if you have a grantee role, you get to see all the information for your grantee organization and all of the providers' data that they enter in for every provider. But let's say you're a subawardee or /provider, and you're in that role, you only get to see your own information. You don't get to see the grantee data. You don't get to see the data for other providers. You only get to see yours. So this allows us to properly associate a user to their given provider. So if you're just coming onto this system and you're a grantee, one of the first things you can do is you can give access to other people who should have grantee access. But if you want to give access to people who need to have provider/subawardee access, you can't come here just yet. And the reason is you have to actually create a record of who your subawardees are. So we're going to get that momentarily, and then we'll come back here. Okay? So let's go back to the grantee data page. Before we get into the data elements, let me just show you some items about the site which you may find useful. When you are on the site, one of the most helpful things that you may find is the user guide. The user guide itself is very comprehensive. Every page that you are required to fill out has a corresponding page in the user guide, which if I were to click on grantee data page, it's going to walk through how to fill out this page in the user guide. It's going to give definitions, expanded definitions of what each of these inputs are. If there's a definition that needs to be elaborated on, you'll find it actually in the definitions table here. So the user guide is a very helpful resource in filling this out if you have any confusion about the substantive data of what you have to enter. Additionally, for on-screen help, if there is something that we felt like could possibly lead to a little confusion, we provided these icons next to it so that you could hover over it, and a little definition box would appear which would elaborate a little more on what we were asking for. To get rid of these, you just click the X in the upper right-hand corner of the definition box. For the user guide, if you want to read it offline, we do have a PDF version here. You can click on that. And then lastly, if you can't find information that you're looking for, you're still confused, you can reach out, click the Contact Us, and you can reach out and communicate with us. If it's a substantive issue, if it's an issue, a question about what the measure is really involving, then contact Mathematica. Their information is here. If it's a technical issue, if you're having problems with the website, or you're trying to enter something and it's not entering right, or something along those lines, contact RTI. Our email address prepta@rti.org. Send it to a number of us here, so that whoever can get to it first can get back to you in a responsive way. Okay, so those are the resources that are available to you right from the get-go. So let's go back to the actual data collection form and show you how it works. I've kind of filled this out ahead of time with some dummy data. These constitute the measures that Mindy was talking about. We do have some inline validation, not a lot of it, just some that helps with some of the areas where it just makes sense. So for instance, an example would be for total prep funds for this federal grant year, we have 500,000, but then we have some subcategories. Well, if you were to enter more than what your total is, you're going to get an alert that tells you that, hey, you can't do that. So if I were to type something else in here and then hit save, it's going to give me, a little red alert up here. And that's typically how these validation alerts will work. Let me change that back. We've tried to make this as straightforward and simple as possible. Whoops, I've gone even higher there. Hold on. Okay, so now I've saved. I've given you see this really red message here, and you might be alarmed by that. But what we're saying here is your data has been saved. However, if this page has one or more incomplete fields, these fields must be completed before the final report due date. Now, the reason we give you this long message is we've tried to make it so that you can go through each of these pages, and if there's some bit of information you don't have right now, no problem. Just fill in what you have and come back and complete it later. But we want to remind you that we do want all of the information. Now, while we do have some validation on each of these pages, the process, the workflow is that you'll go through grantee data. There'll be data for the provider, and then for the program model, like Mindy said. But then to submit your data, you actually do it from a validation report. So the validation report, which we'll get to momentarily, will actually check all of these things, make sure you have your data, give you a chance to go back and correct it before you actually submit your data. Okay, so this is just a reminder, we do want it all, but we have saved it, and please come back and finish it if you haven't. So for the grantee data, I've saved all that data. I'm ready to move on. If you are in the grantee role, you will come to this page first. But if you are a provider in the provider role, you will never see this page. You won't even see this item in the menu on the left-hand side. The first page you'll come to is the subawardee page. Okay, so that's where the roles are very important. So as the grantee, I'm going to go on to the subawardee page. And this is where if I have awardees or providers, I have the opportunity to add them here. The way I would add them is there's a button here on the bottom of this table that allows me to add multiple ones. But I click I've already added one. I could go in and edit that one. Or I can click the little plus sign and add a new one. So there's a minimal amount of information that we're asking for each provider. Whether it's a name, I'm just going to type test for right now. An amount. Let's say that this is a subawardee new. Let's say yes. And did they serve the youth during this reporting period? And let's say they didn't. Okay, if they didn't, you're done. You don't have to enter any other information for this subawardee. You just save it and you're done with that subawardee. But if they did, this is where you see the buttons change here at the bottom. Save and continue. Now you have an option. Grantees can either complete this information themselves, or you can assign that responsibility to the staff or someone within that subawardee or provider organization. And so if I hit save and continue, it's going to take me to the next page. But as a grantee, let's say I've completed all I'm going to complete, and I want to assign it to somebody else to do. I'm going to then go request a user account for that particular subawardee. And you see the one I just created, test, is now on the list. Okay, so that's why you have to create those first. They'll show up here in the list. Then you can request accounts for those subawardees. Okay? Well, let's go back and go through those forms as though we are going to complete that information. I'm just going to go and edit for the one that I've already done. You'll see it's some of the same information that Mindy's already talked about. We're talking about the number of facilitators, who's been observed. We talk about implementation challenges. You'll be able to see these things today when you log on. Now, one thing that could be overlooked is the other down here, as we're asking for needs for technical assistance. If you're somewhat interested or very interested, this other box appears, and we ask you to fill that out. But if you're not interested, it disappears. So that's one thing that we ask you to fill out. If you are interested, somewhat interested, don't overlook the other box. So if I save and continue, it's going to move me on to the next page. And this is where, just like the subawardee table allows you to add multiple subawardees or providers, this allows you to add multiple program models. Okay, and it works the exact same way. You click a little plus sign, and here you have the option of selecting from a program model out of a drop-down list, entering the number of delivery hours, and going through and selecting who your target populations are and what your adult preparation subjects are. And once you click Save, since I didn't fill it in, I'm just going to hit Cancel. Once you click Save, it'll bring you back to this page, and you'll see that you'll see what you just entered show up here in this table. And you'll do that for each program model that's applicable. And once you're done, you click on Done, and it takes you back to the subawardee page. And basically, you completed the cycle of data entry for that subawardee/provider. This grid allows you to kind of jump directly to the program models. So, for instance, if you didn't have all the information for this provider from the start, you can just jump directly to the program models without having to go through each of the pages. So that's just a little bit of a shortcut. Something to also note, if you are in the provider or subawardee role, those people will only see their own names here. They will not see the other names. If I'm associated with test, I'm only going to see test. I'm also not going to see have the ability to add a provider. I'm also not going to have the ability to delete myself. So functionality is dependent upon your particular role. Now, we've gone through, we've entered a little bit of information, and as the grantee is ultimately responsible for all the data. So if you do delegate responsibility to providers or subawardees to fill out their information, it ultimately comes back on you to make sure the information is there. Subawardees and providers do have access to the validation report, and it's context sensitive, so they only see the validation report for themselves. But let's look at it, how it looks for a grantee. For the grantee, what it basically does is it goes through every input that's available to you to see whether or not that input's been completed or if there's an empty field. If there is an empty field, you have a button to return to that page. The button's really more important when you get into some of these, if you have several providers or several program models, this takes you to the specific provider, the specific program model, so that you don't have to go through a lot of navigation to get there. So for this one, I completed all of the information. I selected a main program, so I didn't have to fill out the other, so it says not applicable. Down here where I started the test, you see that it says I'm missing data. Now, for the program model for test, no program models have been entered. Well, it's not going to see any because I never got to that point, so that's going to be in red. This is going to be in red. Ideally, we don't want to see the red if before you submit it. So I've Can click on the return to complete missing subawardee data. Oh, I see. I can say, oh, did subawardee serve youth? I accidentally said yes. I should say no. We'll save that. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the validation report. I'm going to check it out again. Okay, it's all good. Now it still says red, but this is valid. There's no program model associated with this because there's not supposed to be. And with this, I can't tell if there's supposed to be. So I'm good to go to submit this. I come up here to the top. You'll see there's a submit measures. I just click on that, which I'll do in just a second. If I were Native American Team Resources, I would only see my information in the program models for my organization. Okay, I wouldn't see anything else. And they do not have the ability to submit measures. Only the grantee organization has the ability to submit measures. So I'm going to click that, and then it tells me that I've been submitted, and it tells me the date. And when I come back here, it's going to tell me when they were submitted to let me know that I've already done it. Okay. So in a nutshell, I think that's it. You know, hopefully this is a fairly straightforward and easy process to follow. You know, substantively, the information that we're asking for, we've tried to provide as much resource to you as possible for you to be able to find the answers to those questions. In terms of the flow, it's a matter of navigating through each of the screens, kind of in a linear, wizard-like fashion. But certainly we are here to help you. I'm going to pull up a little contact us screen as a part of our slide deck, if I can manage to do that. And then I think we can take some questions. All right, can you be on the lookout for questions while I get the slide deck up?
Yep, sure. We have one question. Can you have both grantee access and subawardee access? So
absolutely.
Yeah. So if a grantee can do whatever a subawardee could, a grantee could do everything for the subawardees. A subawardee, though, if it's just a subawardee, they don't have grantee access. Correct, Eric?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
A subawardee does not have grantee access, but a grantee has subawardee access.
That's right. A grantee can see their stuff and subawardees, but not vice versa.
Right. And a grantee could enter everything. If a grantee said, well, gee, I just want to enter it all myself, that's fine.
That's fine. Grantee can do that.
We had just a comment. Somebody said that they find having the tool to let us know the missing data are there is helpful. And we're glad, and we hope that you use it. It's really designed for you, so you can ensure that what you're submitting is complete. There are no other questions, but please send your questions now. We have all the time in the world to answer them. While you're typing them, Eric can go over the contact information page.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if you can see my screen or not. This is one of those things where
yes, we can see it.
Okay, I may be smart at some things, but not everything. So any other questions? And like
yes,
I said,
we have one that I think is for Mathematica. It's when will we know future reporting period dates for when performance measures are due? So Mindy, I think that one's directed to you.
Okay, sure. So none of the specific dates have been set yet, but we have the general reporting period. So Right now the reporting period is December 5th through January 8th, and then the next reporting period won't be until fall 2014, and unfortunately we don't have specific dates for that period, but it will be sometime in the fall, and then reporting will happen annually starting in fall 2014. So every fall there'll be a period of time that the reporting system will be open for you to report your data.
Okay, thank you. We have another question. Do state prep report during the winter reporting period?
Yes, this is Mindy again. The state prep grantees will be reporting these same measures just like the tribal prep grantees during the same reporting period.
Okay, next question is how can we access the handouts to show the system screen? As I said, we sent an email yesterday to the primary contact for every grantee, and that will have all the screenshots. So I'm not sure who this is. Donna Maselli, I'm not sure who your grantee contact is. If you still don't know who it is, send us an email to the prepta@rti.org, and we'll make sure that you get something. And make sure you let us know what grantee organization you're with. We have a question. Do you have blank sheets for subawardees to complete and then forward the information? I think that might be for you, Mindy.
Yep, there are some data recording tools on the prepeval.com website that I think you can use. It sort of walks you through the different pieces of information that you need for reporting, and that might be a way that you can use. You can give those tools to your subawardees to fill in the information, and they can get that back to you. It's the prepeval.com, and then there's a Prep Nationwide tab, and there's a Performance Analysis Study section underneath that tab, and that's where all of the data recording tools are saved, and there's I'm looking it up right now, actually. There's a tool there for the measures on structure, cost, and support for program implementation that walks you through each of the pieces of information that you need.
Okay, thank you. For the individual who asked about accessing it, you should have received the email with the slides. If you did not, send us an email and we will send them out to you again. Oh, we have another one. Can you explain the last two questions under PREP funding? Did not dispense available funding, total PREP funds allocated to resources other than PREP funding subcategories. I think this might be for you, Mindy.
Yep, I can address that. So those questions were added to help give us a little bit more information about the funding, about the other funding questions that we're asking. And those questions will only be required if at the grantee level, we're asking for total PREP funding, and then we ask for the amount of funding allocated to three different categories for administrative purposes, the amount of funding for training and monitoring, and the amount of funding for direct program provision. And if the total sum of those three categories is less than the total amount of PREP funding, those additional questions will help to give us a little bit more information about why the total amount across those categories, so the total funding allocated to those specific categories is not equal to the total amount of PREP funding. And so, we in the last reporting period, we had some data from the state PREP grantees that suggested that not all of the funds had been dispersed at the time of the reporting, and so there was still some amount of funding that hadn't been dispersed, and so the amount that had been allocated to different funding categories would not add up to the total amount of the PREP funding just because it hadn't been spent yet. Or there may be some instances where funding is allocated to something other than those 3 categories. So grantees may be using their funds for something that they may think doesn't quite fit into those 3 categories. And so this is just an opportunity for us to get a little bit more information about the use of funds, especially when the total sum of the 3 categories that we're asking about does not equal the total amount of the prep funding.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions here, but we'll take another minute in case some of you have some and you want to write them. I don't see any other questions. Remember that if something occurs to you later today after we're gone, or tomorrow as you start to enter your data, you can always contact either Prep Eval or Prep TA, and we will get back to you with a response. So it isn't your last opportunity. Oh, here's another question. Can we contact you directly, Mindy, if we have questions?
The best way to contact us is to contact the entire Prep Performance Measures team, which is a combination of Mathematica and Child Trend staff. So that is through the email address that's up on this Contact Us slide. It's prepperformancemessures@mathematica-mpr.com, or you can call us at a toll-free number, and the number is 1-855-267-6270. So definitely feel free to email or call the Prep Performance Measures email and phone number, and we will get back to you quickly, and we sort of determine the best way to proceed with requests that come through the email and the phone calls. We may set up a team call to discuss the questions, or we may be able to answer questions pretty quickly with an email back, but that's definitely the best way to get in touch with us, through the email or phone number that's up on the slide.
Thank you.
And I would echo that for RTI. What happens is we have a number of people that get these emails, so we use one email address, and a number of people get the email. So whereas you might hit an email box if you were sending it to one person and they might not be able to get back to you right away, it increases the opportunity for us to respond to you quickly. So
absolutely,
that's the benefit of that. And I would like to say one thing as a reminder. One of the things we get questions on most often right at the beginning is questions regarding access to the system. So it is a little confusing sometimes knowing how do you get access to the system. I thought I was the primary contact, or whatever the case may be. If you have a community of practice website, log in, and you log in and you don't see that performance measure system link, and you think you should, reach out to us, let us know. We'll let you know who we have on record as being the primary contact, and kind of orchestrate through that person getting access. And then there were just a handful of entities that didn't have an account already. We're going to send you some emails here just after the webinar, so be on the lookout for those.
Thank you, Eric. We have another question. What if the state wants additional technical assistance? Can we contact our project officer? I would say you can always contact your project officer, and that's a wonderful place to start if there's, some question you have. I know, Dirk, you may want to address this, or Sarah Axelson, but, you can always contact your project officer. Any thoughts from any of the project officers out there? Okay. We have another question here. Total prep funds allocated to resources doesn't read as a yes or no question, so I'm still not clear on that. Perhaps rewording or an information box is necessary. Mindy, is this something you can address?
Yeah, and let me just pull up. Just want to pull up what that looks like. So this is a part of the system that will, your responses will actually, and Eric can speak to this too, will be checked and validated on the data validation page. But here, in terms of the responses for this section, we're just pulling it up again. Eric, can you pull that up, that page of the system? Is that possible?
I think I have it up. Are you not
there
able
we
to
go.
see that? Right here it says total PrEP funds allocated resources other than the PrEP funding subcategories, and I think, and it's kind of a statement with a question mark on the end, but I think
yeah,
I think it's covering that same scenario that Mindy was talking about, where your subcategories, which are, if you find it, do you see my screen, Anna, with the website? Okay, where you have these subcategories here, and they don't add up to your total, which is the one here at the top. So if they don't add up, then they're basically trying to figure out, are they allocated resources other than PrEP funding subcategories, or did you not dispense them? So those are the kinds of questions that are going through their minds, and this is an attempt to ask those questions.
Eric, it's not in full screen mode. That's the problem. Can you enlarge it?
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Does that work? Oh, you know what? Let me try this. How's that?
It's much better.
Yeah,
much
better.
Okay.
Excellent.
Sorry.
Hopefully everybody can see that. We had another.
Oh, I was just going to say, now that I'm looking at the questions again, I just wanted to make sure I was looking at them. Yeah, I think those can be answered with both can be answered with a yes or no. So did you not dispense the total amount of funding available, and then were the total PrEP funds allocated to resources other than the PrEP funding subcategory? So yes or no to those two questions, and then we'll check the responses to those when, as I mentioned, the total across the categories, the three categories above that, don't add up to the total amount of PrEP funding.
Okay. We have a question: when are the measures of structural cost and support due? You need to enter these data starting today until January 8th. So you have, a little more than 4 weeks to enter all these data. I'm not seeing any other questions, but we'll take another minute. I don't think there are any more questions, guys.
And I think there was a question earlier about whether data need to be entered into the system if they've already been entered into the tool that's on the PrEP eval website.
Oh, okay.
And
yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah, so that
All right.
can all be transferred over to the system.
Yes. Yes, because all the information has to go to the system, and then it will, that's the only way that it will make it into the file. So please do that between now and January the 8th. And let me make sure there are no more questions. I think we have answered everything. Wait another minute in case somebody has a last thought. Well, Jamie, I don't think there's any more questions. I think everybody, so I think we are finished for today. And I want to again thank everybody for participating, for asking the questions that you've asked, and for using the system to enter your data. I know that FISB will find them very, very important. So go forth and enter data. Oh, what? There's one more question.
There's one last question that came in.
Yeah, I just thought. Will entry-exit survey data from October through now be entered? Not now. That's not until next fall. Correct, Mindy?
Yes, that's right. And that in the fall, the entry and exit survey data from a full year, from August 1st to July, August 1st of 2013 to July 31st of 2014, that full year of participant level data will be entered in the fall of 2014.
Right. Good question. Well, I really don't see any other questions now.
If there are no other
Thank
questions.
you very much.
Yeah. Yes. Thank everybody. Thank you for participating, and we look forward to you know, helping you get through if you have any questions or seeing your successful data entry. So I think we're done, Jamie.
Well, thank you everyone for attending. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
For any of the panelists, if you don't have the email for signing on to the debriefing, I'll resend that to you.
Oh, I have to get on to